What's up, everybody? Here we are, day 12 of the I'm Curious to Know project, daily live conversations with amazing athletes, personalities, innovators, and just great people from the endurance sports community. And today's guest is someone I'm very excited to connect with. We shared a story of Mike Ergo on our Inner Voice channel a couple of years ago now when he was beginning his journey as a triathlete. Now he's well and truly down the road of being a tri geek, but he's got an amazing story, and I'm really excited to dig in and share that a little bit more today. So, Mike, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for those people who don't know your story, it's been somewhat, publicized over the last couple of years, and rightfully so. But I really want to dig in and share a bit more of your journey and your story because I think it's one that really needs to continue to be told because of the work that you are doing and the great work you do in your community. But let's start from the beginning. You're a
Sure.
U.S. Marine. You're a veteran. You've been a great, yeah, you've been a great American, and you've been a hero, and you've done some amazing things in your time. But tell me about how that first begun for you. When did you realize that
Mhm.
you wanted to serve your country and you wanted to take that on and enlist in the Marines?
Well, service had been important in my life growing up. I've done some mission trips with the church I was going to at the time, and I think my senior year, I wasn't sure about going to college. Just nothing appealed to me except when I saw the Marine Corps, and I realized it was something that I would have to earn myself, and I couldn't take any handouts. I couldn't get any help from family. And service to the country was really important. So I signed up, and I actually signed up the spring of my senior year, right after I turned 18. But I originally signed up to be in the Marine Corps band. So I auditioned and passed for that. Then after September 11th, decided to switch over to the infantry.
Mhm. Um, Tell me what that was like. So, growing up in Australia, we're kind of removed from the US, but we watch a lot of US TV and a lot of movies, and there's the wars, and the war is publicized and I guess glorified. What went into your decision making? You mentioned service was something big for you growing up. Did you really want to make an impact? Like, what were the kind of the thought pattern you were going through of like, I just want to play my part and play a role here, or you wanted to make an impact? What were kind of some of the thought patterns you went through as you're deciding to make that decision?
Yeah, I knew I really craved something challenging and hard,
Mm,
something that it would take every ounce of willpower and reserve I had. And I knew that if I didn't sign up when I had the courage, I had a good chance of just leading a mediocre life. And serving the country was important to me because I just realized I had an awesome opportunity to grow up and be educated and feel safe in my neighborhood. And
yeah.
I grew up hearing a lot of stories about Marines fighting in World War II, in the Pacific against Imperial Japan, and just what they faced. And I said, you know what, um, I want to be part of the Marine Corps if I can, and be willing to serve in whatever capacity I can.
Yeah. And then, so tell me the kind of the next steps there. You enlist. What's your journey through training? What's your journey through getting to the point where you're deployed for the first time? Tell me about that journey.
Sure. Well, you show up in San Diego if you're on the West Coast, and there's the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, which is right next to the airport. So you can see all these recruits getting yelled at and running around as your plane's landing. So you show up on these yellow footprints and you wait, and then it's just a blur of being yelled at and being too slow and hurrying and getting your head shaved and learning that you basically start over from square one. You relearn how to put your socks on the way the Marine Corps wants you to put your socks on. And
Mhm.
so it was the first time I was ever homesick, and I'd spent months away from home during the summers and in foreign countries, but I realized I was no longer grandma's special boy. I was just another maggot or another recruit. So I had to earn the respect I got. I had to earn, I mean, all of the physical fitness. Obviously, there's no getting around that, and
Mhm.
just the mental toughness, being able to perform under pressure. And I liked it. It was terrifying, but I liked the fact that I became way more confident. So after boot camp, I was sent to the Marine Corps School of Music and eventually decided that it wasn't for me and I wanted to be in the infantry, and they were happy to oblige me. So I spent a summer in Carolina, in North Carolina, learning all the tactics of an infantryman, how to shoot, move, and communicate, how to shoot different weapon systems, how to give hand signals and commands, and move in specific formations to attack, defend. And then after that training, which was a few months, I got sent to my unit, still there in North Carolina, and it was probably about 6 months later. So I get stationed my unit summer of 2002, and then I leave early spring 2003 for the war in Iraq.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that when you first arrive at boot camp, it's really a process of breaking you down to build you back up?
Oh, completely. All your individual identity is stripped away. You wear the same clothes, you have the same haircut, you just have a shaved head. And
Mhm.
I remember that night after I got my head shaved, looking at my reflection in the window and just being like, "Ooh, that does not look good." And now I had my baby fat still. I was pale, still am, and just had a shaved head. And yeah, they took all their identity away. We had to respond and talk in the third person.
Yeah.
This recruit instead of me or I, and had to learn how to work as teammates with other people and put other people before ourselves. And that wasn't new to me, but the extent to which we did it was new to me.
Now, I couldn't imagine myself in that position. I'm sure there's probably people that were recruits alongside you that thought, they had this idealistic view of what this is going to be like, and they wanted to enlist, and they had every intention of following through, but they weren't able to fit in, I guess. What are some of the kind of well, even personally yourself, you mentioned you had moments where you're like, oh, I don't know if this is for me. Is there anything
Yeah.
that stands out for you where you're like, you were about to, call it quits and jump on the plane and go home?
Yeah, there's a couple times I wanted to quit, and it's I think it's hard. At least they make you believe it's hard to quit Marine Corps boot camp, and so I think that the time was I was during team week. You basically just do service, and I was working at the cafeteria for the permanent personnel, the drill instructors, and the drill instructor in charge of our work detail absolutely hated me. I think, there I just had this face that people wanted to punch is the best way I could describe it. And almost every day at lunch, he'd take me back while everybody else got to eat lunch and just thrash me doing physical fitness, doing impossible cleaning tasks, like moving the whole squad bay from one side to the other myself or trying to do, a 40-person job and failing at it. And I remember after a especially brutal day of this, coming back to our squad bay with the rest of our platoon, and they had gotten in trouble for something else, and so we had to duck walk the length of the squad bay, and I want to say it's at least 50 to 75 meters long. So we're duck walking, and we'd scrub left, scrub right, step, scrub left, scrub right, step, and it had been a long day, and that
Mhm.
was the closest I got to crying in boot camp because I had tears welling up, and I said, "Man, this is even harder than I had imagined it would be because I'm at that breaking point right now."
Yeah. Did you go there believing that you were mentally tough and mentally strong?
No, I knew I had some mental toughness, but I knew I'd be tested. I early on, I knew that I liked endurance, and so I knew that would
Yeah.
play a part. I just remember in 4th grade, I loved running the mile, and that was the big event for, long distance, sports at our elementary school, and I knew that other kids didn't have just the mental, toughness to keep going for that distance, and I had a little bit more than the average person. So
Yeah.
I knew going into it, I had some advantage, but I knew I was going into a setting with a lot of people from really tough backgrounds that I couldn't
Mhm.
imagine. And so I knew that I wouldn't that I would have my challenge, it'd be challenging for sure.
Yeah. Now you go through training. You're out there in the Carolinas. You're working on your drills. You're working on your formations and your tactics. It still probably feels a far, far, far away from Iraq and the warfield and the battlefield. Tell me about how you felt when you got news that you were shipping out.
I was excited. I was excited because, as you can imagine, an infantry unit spends all of its time training and doing weapons maintenance. So training and cleaning, and it's it's like, constantly practicing for a football game and never getting to play that game. And so finally,
Mm,
we knew that we're going to get to go put our skills to the test, and it was everything we had been training hours and hours and hours and weeks and months and years for. So I was excited, to say the least.
mhm. There must have been that inherent danger. Was there the inner voice in your head saying there's a chance that you may not return, you may get killed in battle? Was that something that crossed your mind, or was this there was something else in you that said this is my place and my purpose, and whatever the result, it will be the result?
Yeah, I had a fatalistic attitude, and I said, "What happens will happen." And there's something, with living with that very possibility and that danger close at hand that made me feel so alive, like I could
Mm,
really feel the present moment, because I could feel the air in my skin. I could taste the food I was eating. I could really hear the people around me because of just how present I had to be because of that danger.
mm,
And I knew that it was a possibility, but I was okay with it, because mostly because I was with people I trusted and I trained with, and I knew they had my back.
mm. Yeah, and I should clarify, it's probably not a great way to go into something like that, believing that the worst result is going to happen. Obviously, it's always what's the best case scenario. Same as an Ironman, same as a triathlon.
Yeah.
I don't want to make that sound like it's the equivalent, because it's not. But you go into it with the best case scenario in your head, rather than the worst case, because you're never going to succeed if you're wondering or if you're thinking that the worst is
Yeah.
going to happen.
True.
Were you okay? And then you get on the plane. Surely you're like, oh shit, turn this around, or you just jumping out of your seat saying, let's go, let's go, let's get there. What was that like as you're flying?
My girlfriend, now wife, because I dropped her off the airport a few days prior, and my heart was just crushed because I was
Mm,
like, I might never see her again. And I knew that I really liked her, but then I realized how much I loved her. And
mm.
the other thing that was going through my head was I forgot sunscreen. And being fair skinned, that's like, man, I might die of sunburn before any bullets come across me. So those are the two things on my mind. And,
Yeah,
of course, all the danger coming up. So it was a mix of uh missing my wife,
yeah.
fear and excitement, and just
Yeah.
all boiled together.
Now, I'm imagining that there's not an opportunity to really talk through your feelings. You're hardened men, and you're ready to go to war, and you've trained for this, and the moment's coming. But you've got these doubts. The guy sitting next to you has these doubts. The guy across the dinner table has these doubts. Was there an opportunity to share these thoughts, or was that something that you just had to bottle up inside and hold on to those doubts
There was
throughout
ways
this
of
experience?
expressing them. Yeah, we had ways of expressing them, but they weren't, overt. They were or explicit. They were ways of looking at each other, just kind of, taking each other's temperature, being like, "You good? You good?"
Yeah,
And there was a lot of gallows humor. For example, I remember, I don't know if it was MasterCard or Visa had this commercial, where they list off things in the price, and then they'd say, like, having the perfect experience, priceless.
yeah,
And I put this on my headband that wrapped around my, helmet. I said, oak casket, $8,000, funeral, $10,000, getting shot in the face, priceless. And so that was my way of dealing with it, and that was the gallows humor that we had, because it
yeah,
was, haha, that's pretty funny. We can make light of it. And then, so
yeah,
there's a lot of that. And there's a lot of that to ease the tension.
yeah. Do you think that kind of attitude um, maybe kind of plays into some of the issues that people have coming back from these zones? And I don't want to skip too far forward in your story, but I imagine that like the ability not to share or talk about those things um, effectively could be part of the issues or part of the problem.
I think so. I think there's an advantage to being so hardened and so, I think, callous and seeing things in black and white that make you a very effective Marine or soldier.
Mm-hmm.
But to the detriment of coming back, being able to see the individual shades of colors or nuance in life. And so, yeah, that not having the vocabulary even to express the feelings I was having definitely played to my disadvantage coming back, because it became all confusion and chaos.
Yeah. But probably at the time you had to segment that part of it. Otherwise, you're not successful in that
Oh,
environment.
exactly. So you were either stoked, you were
Yeah.
bummed out, or pissed off. There's like three emotions you could have, or
Yeah.
fine, which meant anything.
That's what you're allowed to have. Now, I know that your second deployment, you guys, your team, your unit gets caught up in the Second Battle of Fallujah, which, from what I've read, is the bloodiest battle, that has been faced since the Vietnam War. Can you kind of share a little bit about that? I know, it
Yeah.
plays a big part of your story, but I want to hear about that from you.
Yeah. So we were tasked with spearheading an effort, a big battle, city of Fallujah, which I believe before the people were evacuated was about 250,000 people. Really big, built up urban environment, and it became the beacon for jihad, or people who wanted to fight the Americans. So we had people coming from all over the world who were not fans of the U.S. and wanted to fight the occupiers. And so they spent a tremendous amount of time building up the cities, building tunnels in between the houses, setting booby traps, making roadblocks. And so we came into that environment with people in houses with rockets, machine guns, big, heavy weapons shooting at us. And we had to be able to find them first and shoot them before they shot us, which was a challenge because, we're the ones coming in. They have the home field advantage there. So we spent about a month in the city, the first 6 days of which were the full-on invasion and going from north to south of the city, clearing almost every single house in our path, kicking open a door, looking for people to shoot back and trying to shoot them first, and then doing that over and over and over and over. And so days and nights kind of blurred together for a while.
Surely during that month there was moments where you're like, I need to, did you want to finish the job, or you like, get me out of here, this is too much? Like, how do you kind of reconcile those experiences in the moment?
Yeah. Well, I I knew it was everything I wanted. So there's this initial wave of adrenaline, and that would ebb and flow, with the excitement and the sounds and the like. It's complete sensory overload too. And so I said, well, that's what I signed up for. Am I trained well enough? Did I listen? Did I make sure I learned everything to the best of my ability? And
Mm-hmm.
most important to me was, can I bring my guys home alive? And third was, hopefully I can survive this too. And after a while, just after having so many close calls of almost getting shot or, getting blown up and then, coming to and surviving, it started to wear on me. I started to play mental games with myself. As like, all right, if I'm a betting man, how many times can you do this and come out alive? Like, what are the odds? Like, they seem to decrease with each encounter I have, because I wasn't sure how I survived the last one. So eventually, after that month, I was ready, yeah, to get the hell out of there. That's for sure.
Yeah. I have to ask, are you thinking about the human cost on the other side? And this is coming from someone who I've never had a conversation with anyone who's been in a war zone. I've only ever seen TV, movies, and it feels like it happens somewhere else. So I have to ask that question of you.
Yeah,
Does that ever register with you?
it did. And there's this very specific incident in which it did. Um, is there were some women and children who, they had a white flag and they were moving across a road. And this is the first day we'd come into the city, and obviously they had not evacuated or gotten out. And behind them, like sneaking and crouching behind them, were some guys that pretty obvious they were fighting against us and using them as human shields. And I was trying to tell them, Ta'al, come to us. And they couldn't, they couldn't, and they were stuck, and they ended up maneuvering, with these people from one building to the next. And I just thought, man, these poor people are caught right there. Like, they're caught in the middle of this battle between our forces and the other forces, and they have nothing to do with it and want nothing to do with it. So that was very upsetting that I couldn't help them.
Mhm.
And in a large part, though, it was mostly concentrated on killing the enemy. And it wasn't until, years and years after that I slowly started to think about, all the people who lived in that city, who
Mhm.
grew up there, who now don't have homes and who were basically forced out. So it
Yeah.
was a long process of really kind of, and I'm still putting together like the human cost of what happened over there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's it, I don't want to discount or discourage or downplay, the what you were able to achieve and what you guys did there. And the people on the other side also were making the choice to engage as well. It wasn't like there
Yeah.
were these people who were, not wanting to be involved. They were definitely wanting to be involved. So I guess that's probably a way that you and your team could have justified that to yourself in the moment as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's our duty was to enact foreign policy. And it's when I talk to people back home afterwards, they're like, well, were you opposed to it? Were you for it? And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like,
Hmm.
it's not like we get together in a room and say, all right, you guys want to go fight in Iraq? Aye or nay, like
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
go there. We're the ones who enact the policy. We kick down doors if diplomacy fails.
Yeah, understood. That's a good way to put it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Now I know that you lost 29 of your brothers in that particular battle, which for you proved to be a really a big driving factor in the guilt that you carried, that you weren't able to bring your brothers home.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about kind of the feelings that you had around that experience?
Yeah. There were so many Marines that, in my mind, were more disciplined, were more inspirational, were better leaders, were just better Marines and people I really looked up to, who got caught either trying to save other people or got hit with a random bullet or were blown up and just killed in ways. And it made no sense to me. And I especially remember after I got back, we had a memorial service. And for that deployment, we lost 21 and we lost 8 uh, after that, um, in various ways. But I could I tried to go talk to some of the parents and, let them know I was friends with their son, but I felt so ashamed of myself that I couldn't bring their son back, and I had all these fears that, "Oh, man, they're probably angry at me,
Hmm.
because I came back and their son didn't." And so I felt terrible, like, I just felt so inadequate, like, that I couldn't face these people, and it was tough. Like, I went up to this one mother my friend Dave, and before I got there, I just broke down and turned away, so I couldn't even face him and make words come together.
I can see the pain in your eyes as you describe that. I can
Yeah,
feel that you're kind of reliving that moment. Um, for you, that those type of experiences led to some pretty severe PTSD, which led to, using cocaine and alcohol as a way to, numb the pain effectively, and kind
yeah,
of drove you into a period of addiction. I don't want to spend too long dwelling on the negatives because there's so much positive on that story. But
yeah,
can you tell me kind of how quickly that you spiraled out of control, and then maybe to change tact, how did you kind of find your way out of that, and kind of what got you to that place where you were ready to move past all of that?
yeah. So I got home, finished my deployment, and then got out of the Marine Corps a few months later in 2005, and started working at my dad's law firm as a clerk, and started going to community college, and was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do, or really what to do next. And it was just this overwhelming sensation of, whoa, this humongous battle and this war happened, And I was
Mm.
just there. Like, what do I do with that? What do I do now? How do I even understand what happened? So I had what I learned now are called intrusive thoughts, and it's basically like a short YouTube clip of these things playing over and over and over in my mind that I wasn't trying to think about. And I started noticing that driving to school or being in public places, I'd look around and be like, well, I'm safe. However, my body would give me signals that something very bad was about to happen. So I'd feel this intense dread. And a lot of times I'd drive home from school and just smoke as much weed as possible, drink as much as possible until like I didn't have that feeling anymore, because
Mhm.
that's the only way I knew to get rid of it. And so there are a few bright spots along the way, like getting married to my wife, um, getting into a 4-year university. But other than that, things just started getting worse and worse. And the more I tried to use alcohol and cannabis and cocaine and pills to cover it up, the less effect they had, and more the bad consequences, they'd have. I, broke the trust in my marriage. I started
Mhm.
being, not showing up for work. I started failing classes. I started just becoming a person that I despised. And I was getting none of the benefits out of all these substances either. It was just basically I'd grown such a tolerance for it that I just needed them to feel regular now. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it was a pretty low place to be. And I remember this one time I was looking in the mirror and I have a tattoo that says Semper Fidelis. It's the Marine Corps motto, always faithful. And I was like, what a lie that is. Like, I even have a lie tattooed on my body now. So
Mm. Mm.
it was it was, I definitely dug myself into a pretty big hole there, trying not to doing all I could not to feel the pain, not to feel the grief, and not to deal with the symptoms of PTSD and get help.
Yeah. And from what I understand of addiction as well, is there's that element of self-loathing as well that kind of just
Yeah.
perpetuates this cycle that you described. You're
Mhm.
using and you're abusing these substances to make yourself feel better, then you self-loathe and you feel like you need to just continue and over again. What was that kind of what was your bottom? Like what was your rock bottom moment where you're like enough is enough?
Yeah. Well, there were a couple leading up to it, but I remember, waking up and apparently, like, after doing things I wasn't proud of the night before, just having this thought of, usually it was, man, okay, I'm never drinking again, or I'm never going to do that again. But one day I woke up and said, I've said that so many times. It's
Hmm.
just going to be a matter of time before I do something dumb, before I, drunk drive myself into a wall or do something really stupid. So I guess this is just my life now. And that was a sad moment. But I think the lowest I got, and was actually my point of liberation from this, is when I just sat down and talked to my wife. And I don't know, I'm still not sure about the method I took to do it, but I basically just blurted out everything I'd done, when she got home from work one day and said, "Yeah, I'm using a lot more and drugs and alcohol than you think. I've been unfaithful. I'm just a person I despise, and so I can't live this lie anymore." And then, oof, it was it wasn't this big secret I had to
Mm.
keep up with anymore. So from there, I was able to figure out what to do next to redeem myself and become the person that she knew I could be, that I knew I was deep down.
Yeah. Um, Thank you for sharing. Again, I can
Yeah.
see how meaningful that is to you to share that and get that, to get that off your chest. Now, you stumbled on Ironman. You were vacationing in
Yeah.
Hawaii. You see this crazy thing called Ironman happening around you, and you're like, there's no way I could do that. These guys and girls are crazy.
Oh,
What are
yeah.
they thinking? But then that, for the same as many of us, this the seed of doubt or the possibility starts to kind of gnaw away at your brain. Tell me about what that was like for you. Did you go home and research and think about what you could do? How
Oh,
quickly did you
man.
kind of decide that you wanted to do that?
Oh, on the ground, like, while I was there, I was looking it up on my phone. I was like, "All right, what are these distances?" Like, I was like, "What is this?" And that, like, I remember it was this mixture of powerful feelings. Fear was one of them.
Yeah.
Anger, because I was saying, like, "Why would these people do this? What the hell is wrong with them?" And then I could notice the excitement there, and that was the key to getting out of the control fear had over my life, was
Mhm.
noticing that a lot of times when I saw things that my heart desired, it was the excitement was there with the fear. And if I could notice that, I was like, well, there's something there. I don't know what it is cognitively, rationally, but I'm going to take the step towards it. And there was something that drew me to it. It was just the buzz of the village in Kona, the Ironman village, and
Yeah.
the excitement I saw with all of the athletes. And it's like, man, they were really into this. Like, they don't seem like I would feel in that moment. It was like this death sentence of this huge task I have to undertake,
Yeah.
going 140 and change. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, there must be something to this. And I got home, and almost immediately, I think it was as soon as half Ironman in my area opened up, I registered that morning for it.
Yeah.
And it was a powerful thing, because here's the thing. I knew that physical fitness was the one of the keys to my salvation, really, because I had a friend who gave me a birthday present for my 30th birthday, and I was just newly sober, and he gave me a registration to a half marathon, and I was pissed at him because I was like, I'm gonna have to work
Where's
for
the
this.
real gift? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what who gives someone that? And
Yeah.
um, but it was a few weeks into training for this race, and I just remember the corner I was in this neighborhood where I just had this big epiphany. I was like, "Oh, I feel good. Like, I feel safe in my body. Like, I feel like it's okay to be here right now." And I had
Mm.
not had that in such a long time, and it was such a relief to feel that. And it was like, wow, I don't have to be completely loaded to feel like it's okay to be alive. And I said, there's something to this. I'm going to keep up with it. And so by the time
Mm.
the chance to do a triathlon came along, I was like, I'm all in. I just got to figure out, like what this whole cycling thing is about. I knew how to, ride a bike as a kid, but I was like, I imagine there might be some technique to the whole, turning the pedals.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I've heard it described from a really good friend of mine, Charlie Engel, who's got a great story. He's 26 years sober, and he kind of transferred his addiction from drugs and alcohol to ultra running. And I talked to him about that and kind of transference of addiction. And he says that the difference is when you're addicted to drugs and alcohol, you're doing that so you don't feel anything, and when you're addicted to moving and endurance sports, you're doing that so you do feel everything. So I'm guessing that's kind
Yeah.
of that feeling you had when you're training, and all of a sudden, all of these sensations are coming back to you, and you're having this moment of like, oh, I feel again. I can feel what I'm supposed to be doing in this moment.
Yes. And I could feel, in some sense, the presence of my friends who were killed, and I could
Yeah.
feel this act of forgiveness for myself happening. Like, it's okay that I'm alive. It's okay to try to be happy. It's okay to continue my life. And so I was able to process these feelings I haven't had, didn't allow myself to had while I was running or while I
Mm.
was swimming or cycling. Most of them came on the run. And so I was able to laugh, shout, cry, all of these things while I was running. And
Yeah.
that process itself is like just as good as any therapy I could do. And I did some powerful therapy too. But the fact of it was that, yeah, I did want to feel everything. And I finally was empowered and knew that I had the strength to feel everything. I didn't have to avoid it.
Mm. Yeah, it's so powerful. I love that kind of that the way that he describes it and the way that you just described it as well. What was it like? You work out the cycling part, you're training, you're putting in the work. What was it like for you standing on the start line of your first 70.3, looking around? There's people in silly caps, there's colors everywhere, there's motion and excitement and noise. And what was that experience like for you? What was
Yeah.
that feeling?
I was there with my friend Chris, who got me that registration for that first half marathon, and great friend. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about the best present he could have ever given me that launched me into this. And I just made a short video because I was like, I want to put it out there why I'm doing this. And I put all the names of my fallen on my jersey. And so I just want to dedicate, the race to them. And so I kept that on my mind, and I was scared. I was like, I'd never gone 70 miles before. I've never done really anything longer than a half marathon, all at once. And so there was the jitters, but deep down below that was just the purpose, and that
Mm.
purpose of why I was doing it was like, give me all the strength I needed. And I knew, well, I'm not going to quit. I mean, worst case scenario, I just get more tired than I thought I was going to get. And
Yeah.
so I just took that into it, and off I went. And God, it was so fun. It's so fun. Just the feeling of the water, just the buzz of all the other athletes, just that race day feeling that we all know and love. It was
Hmm.
perfect. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be part of my life for a long time.
Yeah. And then how quickly did you take on Ironman after that? 70.3, dip your toes in the water, and then you move on to Ironman. How quickly did that happen for you?
That was 2 years after. Yeah, so 2 summers after I did my first full in Santa Rosa out here in Northern California. And yeah, it was, again, that feeling. And man, nothing compares to that feeling, especially of coming across that finish line. Like, the first one, that is a powerful feeling.
Yeah. Did you think back to that your time in Hawaii, like when you're going through that Ironman in Santa Rosa? Did you think back to seeing yourself standing on the sidelines,
Yeah.
wondering what the hell these people are thinking about?
I did, and I thought about, man, that was me. That was a version of me that did not see this as possible. Like,
Mm, mm,
I did not see that as possible, and I even had that feeling too during my first few 70.3s, because I didn't think that was possible. And just looking back, I'm like, okay, if I didn't think that was possible, and yet here I am doing it, what else can I do? And
yeah,
I mean, really, where are the limits? Are there limits? And so, like, my vision of what it meant to be alive, and what I could accomplish, and the limits I'd set for myself were just getting flipped over.
yeah. And you're doing this for yourself. At this point, you're still doing this for yourself. You're honoring the other people that you've lost, and you're really working on that side of it as well. But since then, and as a part of this process, you've really dug into what can you do as Mike Ergo to help and support other people who are going through the same and similar things that you were going through when you came back. Can you tell me about
Yeah.
how transitions from war started, how the Gold Star Initiative started, and tell me more about that, because you're doing some incredible work, and I want to acknowledge that work that
Yeah.
you're doing as well.
Well, I wanted to start writing about the journey I was going through, and so I started Transitions for More, kind of a play on, triathlon, and my own journey back home.
Hmm.
And just for myself to understand what was happening and put it out there. I didn't even think people would read it or listen to, the podcast, but I said, you know what, maybe it'll help one person, maybe it'll help a couple people I know. Um, but eventually that became, got the attention of Ironman. They invited me to Kona. I went there and raced, and phenomenal experience. And that that came together the following year in Santa Rosa, because they made me the ambassador for that race, and they asked me if I wanted to do something special for it. And I said, I don't know where it came from. It was just somewhere deep, and it was terrifying. I said, I want to run the marathon of this race with an American flag in honor of someone who was killed in action here locally. And then there's just kind of a deadbeat, just a pause in the conversation. And they're like, are you sure you can do that? I was like, yes, I'm
Yep.
100% sure. I mean, like, because I just tapped into the purpose. I mean, scared the hell out of me. But
Hmm.
and so that's where the Gold Star Initiative started. That year in Santa Rosa in 2018, we carried a flag in honor of a, Army Corporal Josh Kynock. And the special thing was that I knew how alone I felt coming back and grieving. And I learned, talking to Gold Star families, which are families that have lost someone serving in the military. I learned how alone they felt, and how they wanted to connect with veterans, and and how the community back at home wanted to help, both the Gold Star families and vets, but a lot of times wasn't sure how. I said, man, we have all these three people, like these three camps, like wanting to help each other, but we're all kind of suffering alone. So I said, what if we bring it together here in my favorite place in the world, race day and Ironman, and we honor, those lost in combat, those lost in military service. And, I knew the family would like it after talking to them. I had
Yep.
no idea how healing it would be for me, for other veterans who have been part of it since. And I had no idea how much the public would really like it. And the response was overwhelmingly positive. So when I asked Ironman if we could make this a national initiative, they said, yeah, of course. And so now it's not just me carrying a flag for these families, but it's a lot of other veterans carrying flags and, sharing and healing,
Yeah.
with the Ironman Foundation.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's an amazing initiative, and I think it's, as you described, so helpful for so many people. Um, Now, given that 2020, there's, not a lot of races happening, and potential that, there's not going to be races this year at all. Um, what are you guys working on to kind of continue that message? I'm sure you're getting more and more outreach. There's probably people who are really struggling through this time. Tell me about kind of how you're handling the current climate and the current circumstances we're all dealing with.
Yeah. So I've stayed in contact with these families, and I've been staying in contact with a lot of the vets I've met out in the course who've been part of the Gold Star Initiative or who want to be. And I know that in the same way, when you're on the flight, they tell you, with the oxygen mask drops down, you take care of yourself first so you can help someone else. And
Yeah.
I've been doing that. I've been making sure that I get up and I work out because even though a lot of times, because I'm feeling the anxiety, I'm feeling the fear here too. Um, but I know that moving my body is the answer a lot of times, or sitting in silence and breathing.
Hmm.
And I get up knowing that that is important to do. And I've done a couple of the races that were canceled. I just did them on my own. I said, if they're not going to have the race, if they're not going to show up, I'll show up. And actually, on my birthday, I was supposed to do the San Francisco Rock and Roll Half Marathon, and obviously was canceled. And so I ran it myself. And my daughter made this medal, which is now my favorite medal,
There you go.
for me. It
Awesome.
says Ironman on there in 6-year-old language. And um, so we did that. And then last weekend, it was supposed to be the Ironman 70.3 Santa Rosa. And socially distanced with a few other friends, we did that ourselves, did a 1.2-mile run and then the bike and the standard run.
Yeah.
So being able to move my body and just adapt, like I think being a Marine is an advantage now because, one of the things they always say about Marines is they improvise, adapt, and overcome, and just kind of figure out how to put ingenuity and duct tape together and figure something out. And so that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, love it. Well, I applaud your positivity. I applaud your approach. I applaud the way that you're living your life and you're giving back and you're serving and you're helping other people. So hats off and kudos to you for living this full life and taking on your own journey and facing your demons and doing it in a way that's supportive and helpful to other people who are going through the things that you've been through.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to, if it's not 2020, it's going to be 2021, but I will be carrying the flag at Kona. I
Mm,
get to go back there and carrying the flag for fallen Marine Lance Corporal Nick Anderson, and his mother is a very dear friend to me. So we're going to get to honor her son, and she'll be there at the race and at the biggest stage in triathlon. Going to honor someone really special. So whenever that happens this year, next year, I'm looking forward to it.
Amazing. This has been the fastest 45 minutes I think of my whole entire life. I do have three questions I want to ask you, but
Yeah,
I'm very sure that we will continue to have conversations like this. I want to hear more of that journey. I want to tell more of your stories. I want to honor those people that you're honoring through the Gold Star Initiative. So we're gonna do this over and over again. I've enjoyed our chat today, but I do have
sounds
three
good.
questions I want to ask before we leave. These are the same questions I ask every day. So first one being, what's one thing that's changed for you during this isolation period, that you want to keep, you want to make a part of your life once we go back to whatever our new normal is?
I think it is hugging my family because not that I never do that, but I'm a big physical contact person. I love to high five. I like to hug, and
Mhm.
not being able to do that with friends and people I care about outside of my family. I've really taken the time to be affectionate with my kids and with my wife, and I want to keep that.
Love that. Love that answer. Yeah, so you watch TV or you watch movies and you see people hugging and high fiving, and I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I wish I could just give, a wife and kids, but like other people, just like give them a high five and give them a hug when you greet them. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward
I
to that
know.
too. Um, Second question: what's one thing that you thought was important before isolation, that you're happy to leave in the past?
Hmm. I'm not sure about that. You know, um, I don't know. God, I'm blanking out on that one.
That's okay.
I'll get back to you with that.
We'll come back to that one. Last a lot. Well, I'll give you some answers that people have given that might help jog your memory or give you some thoughts. So a lot of people have talked about spending money on stuff that they don't
Yeah.
need. Other people have talked about having to feel like they need to show up for social media and creating content that may not serve them, but they want to feel relevant. And then the other one that's been really interesting is driving and traveling and feeling like you have to be on the road and constantly in motion and moving. So there've been some of the answers we've heard so far over the last few days.
Yeah, I think one of them is the having to spend a lot of money and go somewhere far to have, quality family time. Because I
Mm.
mean, I went camping in the backyard with my kids, a few weeks ago, and that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. Camp Ergo in the backyard. I love it.
Yeah.
Uh, um, what's third question, final question? What's been the most memorable moment of joy you've had during this isolation period?
I think it was when my daughter came up to me on my birthday and she gave me this medal that she handmade, and she said, "Dad, I made you this medal because I know your race got canceled and you really like to do races, and I want you to be happy." And my heart just melted, and felt the tears welling. I was like, "Wow, this little kid is special." And
Yeah.
yeah, it was a cool moment for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. She's 6. Is she 6, your daughter?
6 years old, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we have similar names to our kids. She's
Yeah.
an Adeline, and I've got an Adelina here. So,
Yep. Both Addies.
good choices. Mike, this has been amazing. I really appreciate your time. It's been an honor connecting and having this conversation. As I said earlier, I would long to have more of these because I think your story and your journey is so impressive, and I want to make sure lots of people hear about it. So,
I love to.
appreciate
It's
the
been
time.
fun. It's been
Yeah.
fun talking with you, Travis. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch and we'll have more of these, mate. So, all the best, and thank you for joining me. And if you are all listening at home, watching at home, 3:30 every day we go live. Not sure what I was thinking, Mike, to do every single day at 3:30, but here we are. We're almost halfway through,
Impressive.
and I get to have conversations with people like you. So I'm very grateful for that as well. So, tune in every day, 3:30. It's been fun, Mike. All the best.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.